Welcome back to Mr. Slover's Math. Today we're going to talk about absolute value and solving. So you're going to be able to solve absolute value equations. So the warm-up is just getting you ready to solve equations. We got a one-step equation and then some two-step equations. And it's okay that you're getting decimals, not a big deal, or negatives. And then number two is asking you to just simplify. And this is what we talked about yesterday. You do what's inside the absolute value first. So do the 3 plus 4 first. Take the absolute value of 7 to get 7, and then multiply by that negative 2. So negative 2 times 7 gives you negative 14. So that's just to get us ready for what we're doing today, which is the solving. It says, if the absolute value of x equals 8, what does x equal? Well, x could be 8. The absolute value of 8 is 8. But I could also have negative 8. Because remember, the absolute value is the distance from 0. So your distance could be to the right of 0 or it could be to the left of 0. So with that in mind, there are two answers here. There are going to be two answers when we solve our absolute value equations. So it says solve for the given variable. In order to do this, take what's inside the absolute value. That doesn't change from equation to equation. So the absolute value of f is just f equals 7, 7. The absolute value of f is f. And now here's where it's different. I went from a positive to a negative. Okay? And that's what's going to happen for all of these equations that you solve for. The first equation you set up is the exact same. You just lose the absolute value bars. The second one, you lose the absolute value bars, and it equals the opposite of whatever it was. So the n stayed the same, 12 stayed the same, and then my second equation, the n is the same, and then this becomes the opposite. Because remember, your absolute value is the distance from 0. So 12 or negative 12 are both the same distance from 0. So we're going to have two answers. So those were the very basic ones. And I say basic because all you had to do, there was no operation inside the absolute value. Okay? Moving forward, the rest of these do have operations inside the absolute value. So I've got some notes here. What I circled stays the same for both equations. Because remember, you're going to have two equations for all of example 2. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and that's it. So each letter is going to have two equations. Right? So what's inside the absolute value is in both equations. What it equals, and here's my note, it says stays the same for one, turns negative for the other. So it stays 18, and then the other one, it's negative 18. What was inside stays the same. X minus 6, x minus 6. That stays the same. I cannot stress that enough. The only thing changing is what's on the outside of the absolute value. The equals whatever. So in this case, the equals 18. One is positive, one is negative. Once you create your two equations, there's no absolute value bars. You solve it just like an equation. So I add 6, add 6. I get two answers, positive 24, negative 12. Okay, let's try another one. Take what's inside the absolute value. It stays the same, 4h, 4h, equals 40, equals 40. 4h, 4h. And since this is the second equation, this is positive, so this has to be negative. Divide both sides by 4. H is 10, and h is negative 10. Letter C, same thing. Take what's inside the absolute value, which is x plus 6. That stays the same from problem to problem. And then positive 8, positive 8. And then the second equation, it becomes a negative 8. So after you solve, you get x is 2 and x is negative 14. Letter D, same thing. What's inside the absolute value stays the same. I drop it straight down. There's no absolute value bars in my equations. One's a positive 4, one's a negative 4. And this time when I solve, I get a negative 2 and a negative 10. And you're thinking, Mr. Slover, you can't have two negatives. But you can. Because if I plug in a negative 2 and if I plug in a negative 10, both of those are going to make this equation true. So that's okay that I got two negatives. It's okay if you get two positives. It's okay if you get one positive, one negative. It's okay if you get whole numbers. It's okay if you get fractions or decimals. All of that is okay. Okay. There are 4 more that you can work through. You can hit pause on the video, work through them, and then check your answer. So remember, what's inside the absolute value stays the exact same. The only thing changing is what it equals. One of them will be positive, one of them will be negative. So today we focused on solving absolute value in equations. There are 2 equations for each example. So this had 2 answers, 2 answers, 2 answers, 2 answers. It will always be like that. Make a note to your